Greetings and welcome to the Recombobulation Area. My name is Dan Schaefer. Thank you all for joining us. It has been a discombobulating morning. It has been a discombobulating week. It has been perhaps the most discombobulating stretch of campaign politics that I can remember here in the state of Wisconsin. But I am here to talk with someone who I think needs no introduction with Recombobulation Area readers based on our ranked choice voting experiment. She is Francesca Hong. Welcome to the Recombobulation Area.
Happy to be back.
What a week. What a couple of weeks. What a day. It's all been very discombobulating. Just to offer a quick recap for those who might not be following this beat by beat, about a couple of weeks ago, Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley left the race for governor. A couple days later, he endorsed Sara Rodriguez. A couple days later, Sara Rodriguez released a statement. That was last Sunday night. Released a statement saying that she was firing her campaign manager over major campaign finance problems. Last week, a lot of ups and downs. Eventually, the lieutenant governor did drop out of the race. Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley re-entered the race. He did so with the endorsement of Governor Tony Evers. This has all been very discombobulating. Your campaign has put out a couple different statements on this. Well, let's just hear it right from you. What is your reaction to the chaos of the last couple of weeks, and in particular, the decision from David Crowley and Tony Evers?
We want to stay focused, disciplined, and I remind myself that I can thrive in chaos. I come from the service industry where the variable are always the people. You can have everything ready with your mise en place for service, but I think that right now, staying focused on our organizing, GOTV, get out the vote, and meeting voters in every corner of the state up until Election Day on August 11th. A crowded primary makes for a healthier democracy. I respect the decision of David Crowley, and the governor is free to endorse whom he wants. I think that our decisions will always stay rooted in making sure that this election belongs to the voters and that they are informed about our vision and our message for permanent affordability.
The reaction that there was a lot of reaction from a lot of directions to these decisions over the past few days. I thought it was interesting that the statement that you put out was not especially critical of the county executive, wasn't especially critical of the governor. Other candidates have taken different approaches. Why did you take that one?
Well, I have a lot of respect for David, and I know putting yourself into a statewide race takes a toll on you as an individual. He still has a job to do running the county as the county executive. It takes a toll on his family. I'm sure he did not take this decision lightly, and if he believes and wants to fight for his ideas, and then I think it's only fair that if he's allowed to come back into the race, now that he's in it, we continue to debate on ideas and fight to earn every vote that we can.
There's a lot of people talking about how this may reflect a decision where the establishment is lining up against a certain candidate. A lot of people have made that point over the past, 48 hours or so, or whatever it's been. Is that the way that you see it?
I think there are many different uh, views on who the establishment is. And for me, I'm not here for, governing by slogans or vague views on, who might be controlling the elections. For us, we are staying focused on doing what we know how to do, and that is build the broadest coalition to make sure that we win in August and defeat Tom Tiffany in November.
That word establishment, right? It means a lot of things to a lot of different people. I kind of feel like it's the way conservatives use the word woke sometimes, where everything I don't like is woke, or everything I don't like is the establishment. But what does that word mean to you? What does that word establishment mean to you?
I think there is a lot of gatekeeping in politics. Information is currency, relationships and who you know is currency. And so, just based on the math, adding up who has the most information and who has the most relationships and how they use that to, wield political influence, folks who are in maybe those circles or the people who answer to those folks could be considered establishment. But again, especially right now when we have, our coalition is a lot of voters who have been feel very disillusioned, who didn't want anything to do with politics. maybe didn't even show up to vote in 2024, and they're staying engaged because they believe that they are a part of change, and that in order to have real change, we need, a very diverse coalition of people of all varied experiences, viewpoints, and relationships in politics. And so I think that it's a lazier argument to blame establishment. For us, we're focused on what we're going to do to build permanent affordability, in building, the actual coalition. We're hearing that word thrown around a lot too. And for us, it's having a campaign that is focused on building communities, where we're bringing more people in, because we didn't have enough people involved in politics to make sure we got the wins that we needed in 2024. And our campaign has the receipts to show we're doing that.
Well, tell me about those receipts then.
We have had more individual donors and donations than a sitting U.S. congressman, who has the backing of the billionaires. We have more, a lower, under $50 donor donation. We've got almost well over 6,500 people who have signed up to volunteer for our campaign. I mean, this means I answer to the people, and that this is a people powered campaign. We had posters or postcards and potlucks events, canvas launches in every corner of our state, folks who are helping us reach our 500,000 door knocking goal, people having play dates in communities with families, talking about the importance of getting out the vote, and making your plan to vote. Early vote starts in July 28th, or early in person absentee voting. So that's, this is movement building. And I said at the beginning of this campaign that we are in a movement moment. We're setting out to do and doing the things that we said we would do, and we're going to continue to do them and grow.
So I want to talk a little bit about the Milwaukee County Executive and his launch in the race and some of the policies that he championed in the speech that he gave the other day. So I was there at Third Street Market Hall, downtown Milwaukee, when he, delivered the speech to relaunch his campaign. And one of the things that he touched on in that speech, and a number of his supporters at that event talked about, was Act 12 and the work that he did to, work with the governor, work with folks in the legislature, to pass Act 12 in 2023. Just to zoom out on that one for a minute, that was the shared revenue and sales tax bill. Probably one of the most significant bills passed in Wisconsin state government over the past few years, during Tony Evers' second term, certainly. You were in the legislature, you voted against Act 12. You know, Give me your big picture view on that piece of legislation, on Milwaukee County's component of it, on the work that Crowley did, and why you made the decisions that you made around that bill.
I applaud the county executive for the, relationships that he built, the work that he put in. Robin Voss is an incredibly manipulative and ruthless legislator who is an incredible negotiator. And I do believe that David Crowley tried to get the best deal possible. However, conditioning funding, whether it was putting school resource officers back in MPS, in raising a sales tax that we know hurts our lowest income earners or our first, I think that in the end, to me, the uh, there were too many compromises, and I tried to stay very focused on what the rest of the Milwaukee delegation was feeling, in making sure that I was supporting and honoring and knowing what's going on the ground in their individual districts, and what they thought about Act 12. I think that what was also important, though, is how much it brought attention to the importance of funding local government services, and how in this last 16 years with Republican rule in the legislature, we have hollowed out local governments. We have defunded essential services. We have volunteer firefighters and EMS services when we should be paying our EMS service workers, and no local town or village should have to be at risk of not having a snowplow. to actually pave and plow the roads. And so this, we're trying to make shared revenue sexy again. We want to make sure folks know that we're trying to establish local control for communities, and local control means having the resources needed to provide the essential services that individualized communities need.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, you last time we talked, when we spoke at length for a feature story that I wrote at the recombobulation area, you had talked about how you felt shared revenue was like really one of the pillars of your policy platform. And I think, yes, those one of the arguments that I made at the time was that that we needed to pass Act 12 to live to fight another day. And I think at the local level, certainly, when the Milwaukee Common Council, City Hall is right behind you here, the Milwaukee County Board, once what was passed in the assembly, those certain things that you talked about, the conditioning funding on for Milwaukee in particular, once those things passed in the assembly, there was not a lot that could be done at the local level about that. One of the things that I thought was interesting in real time was that the Democratic Socialists chapter in Milwaukee was against Act 12, even in the legislature and at the local level. And I talked to some folks at the time, some of the Milwaukee legislators. I remember talking to State Representative Evan Goyke about this,
Mm-hmm.
where or now City Attorney Evan Goyke, where he's like, yeah, I voted against this, the legislature, but I would be for it at the local level. I would be for it in the local level because, that would be funding that the city needs.
Mm-hmm.
And without a lot of that funding that comes from the sales tax, the city would be in dire straits. So, put yourself in that position of, many of the local legislators at the time. Would you have voted against it if you were a member of like the common council or county board or something like that?
I think in understanding the realities of the financial situation that the city and county was in, if I was at the local level, um, you know, I would have voted for it. But I am the legislator from Madison, and it wasn't a good enough deal for Madison. And I talked to a lot of folks in mid sized cities as well. We needed a much better deal in order to make sure that the years of hollowing out local government funding through shared revenue, was like we had an opportunity to at least make sure that we can make budgets whole. And I understand that had to happen for Milwaukee County, but at the legislator point, I think that you know I was with I was with many Milwaukee state legislators in voting against Act 12. Um,
So municipal funding in general was also something that a number of people I talked to at Crowley's relaunch event. There were a number of kind of mayors and local leaders. I talked to the new Waukesha mayor Alicia Alvensleben, talked to the Sheboygan mayor Ryan Sorensen. They all talked about how that was really a point in Crowley's favor, the work that he did on that bill. If you were to be elected governor, how would you prioritize local funding differently than perhaps Crowley might?
I want to make sure that access to funds, especially when it comes to social services, that we have a formula that's more equitable for communities that are mid-sized to smaller size towns. And I think I say that because I was recently in Racine, and I also talked to some folks in Grant County. And what happens is being able to access the different grants available for, let's say, even roads and infrastructure, to some of the funding for violence prevention. I want to make sure we're not pitting communities against one another. And so that's why, for me, it's about looking at changing the shared revenue formula as a whole, as a long term goal, but increasing funding in a much more equitable manner for this next state budget. But I welcome conversations with Mayor Halverson and Sorensen, because shared revenue is an absolute priority of mine going into this next budget, alongside public education and healthcare and housing.
Over the last couple of weeks regarding your campaign and in a decision that the Republican Governors Association had made to put out an advertisement that is widely believed to designed to boost your campaign among Democratic primary voters, because they think it makes the candidate who they think is the easiest to beat to be the potential nominee. What's your big picture reaction to um, that ad in general, and just that overall message that that sends to Democratic primary voters that the Republican Governors Association is getting involved to this degree?
The Republican Governors Association's decision to fund an ad where it talks about my um, uh, opposition to ICE and my support of abolishing ICE and putting money behind that. Um, you know, again, the message that I have created the Keep Families Together bill package legislation that helps to ensure that we are keeping families together and combating the ICE agency. I think, that them getting involved is nothing that we have had certainly any input in. That they see us as a threat, I think only puts us in a stronger position to make sure that we defeat probably the weakest candidate that the Republicans have put forth in a statewide election. And I look forward to defeating Tom Tiffany, who is an election denier, traitor, pedophile protector, and supports Trump over the people of Wisconsin, as we saw with his votes for tariffs, for gutting healthcare, and for ripping food share away from our kids.
So you don't see it as an unfair decision to wade into this Democratic primary so that, I think some of the arguments some of the other folks are saying is that, we don't want Republicans to make the decision for us.
Republicans have proven time and time again that they're not interested in playing by the rules or being fair. And right now, we have arguments within the Democratic Party that there may be meddling in primaries. Our focus is on making sure that this election belongs to the people by going to the people, by getting our message to them, by staying focused on grassroots and growing the volunteer community and showing that this is going to be the year of not just the money, but of the many.
I want to talk about something else that's a little bit more it's a little bit more of a opaque subject to talk about because it's not like, oh, you see this ad buy, you see this whatever,
Mhm.
you see this decision, there's this reaction. I want to talk about your ground game. You have celebrated this throughout your campaign and the number of volunteers that you have. And I think one of the folks involved with your campaign put out a video last week that you're aiming to put out the biggest field operation in the history of the state of Wisconsin. Tell me about what's been happening with the ground game in the Hong campaign.
I'm going to highlight our amazing regional committee in central Wisconsin, where in Wood County, Portage County, and Marathon County, we are seeing a multi generational coalition come together. And I think we have a real opportunity to have huge turnout for Democrats in the general, as well as strong support in the primary for us. It was Portage County Dems meeting, and we had socialist alternative folks there, Democratic socialists there, independents, young people who had never been to a county party meeting before. The folks there were so excited at all of the new faces in the county party meeting. And that has been the goal, to build out an organizing apparatus where we can merge with our county party organizing that's across the state and actually help make sure that we're engaging young people, new people, in knocking doors, in getting excited about, campaigning doesn't have to just look like knocking doors or phone banking. It can actually be fun in the community where, like, doing community events, social events is such an important part of staying engaged in politics because it's exhausting and the news is exhausting and what is happening in the world can be incredibly discombobulating. But it's been important for us to help give people the tools and skills and feel empowered to stay engaged in politics locally. And I think this is so incredibly important for building power for Democrats, especially at the local level, where I think we will start to see new young folks running for office, seeing talking about the importance of a school board, of your county board elections, your city council elections, and getting people excited to be involved and feel empowered in democracy again. This is what we need to build when it comes to taking on a Trump regime. I hear a lot of folks talk about fighting Trump, but what it actually looks like is on the ground organizing and communities coming together and building resiliency and having fun and making sure that people see that people can reclaim power back in politics.
How has that ground game evolved as you've been talking to people throughout this campaign? I mean, we're many months
Yeah.
into this.
We invested early in organizing, and that's, from my understanding, not always the norm. The fundraising game is early, somewhat of a smaller staff. We started with a larger staff and invested in digital organizing and on the ground organizing early so that we knew heading into the second half of the campaign that we would have to have the infrastructure ready for folks to continue to be able to organize volunteers and for our staff to be able to manage many volunteers. The evolving, I think what's been great is people um, to see people take do their own events. I mentioned postcards and potlucks over the weekend. There's been repair cafes where people get together and like just have folks in the community help fix small appliances to bikes and then talk about, you know, free childcare and shared revenue. I think that's been, there's been dance parties, there have been people who are doing knitting clubs. I think the creativity is what has helped, and the innovation has helped grow the volunteer community and the reach because people are saying, oh, it doesn't have to just be phone banking or canvassing. I'm kind of hesitant to do those things. I can actually take the things that I enjoy and build politics into my life as opposed to making it feel like it's kind of taking over mine.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think a couple of folks from your campaign have talked about just how many miles you've logged in the car. All of these different ground game events, all of the different miles that you've logged. Has that changed any part of your policy platform too?
It has. I think that, well, one, we have to make sure that we're carrying forward Tony's commitment to fixing the damn roads. I hear a lot about rural road infrastructure, and I feel it as we are driving across the state. The Knowles Nelson Stewardship Program, the making sure that we're investing in public lands, how important and how bipartisan funding for the DNR. These types of policies that are you know more bipartisan than I thought. And it's made me realize that it's important to go into smaller communities, especially doing your homework and knowing what some of the local political issues have been, what people are organizing around. And I have to say that it has made our commitment in supporting a moratorium on data centers even clearer. I introduced a legislation. I think there's maybe been some confusion, but I do have a bill for a moratorium on the construction of new AI data centers. And it is certainly something we hear about in almost every single town hall that I've had.
All right, I want to ask one non-political question about all the miles that you're logging. What are you listening to in the car?
I wish I could listen to more music. I'm still the new BTS album, or newish BTS album now, is my go to, but I'm making a lot of calls in the car, political calls, donor calls, and talking to staff. Car time is work time.
Car time is work time. Yeah, no minutes off. Not even no days off. No minutes off
Yep,
here.
we had
As
to
you're
out hustle everyone, and I think you called that early that you would be seeing that from us.
yeah. Okay, so I want to circle back to something else, not on the political side about Governor Evers, but just on the policy side. Because if he decided to make his decision to endorse in this primary, which you don't seem opposed to him making the decision, I'm sure you would have rather he endorsed you or something else like that. But um, just from a big picture assessment of Tony Evers' time as governor for the past 8 years. When you step back, when you zoom out, you've been in the legislature for 6 of those 8 years, right? What's your big picture assessment of Tony Evers' time as governor?
Tony Evers has done everything. Governor Tony Evers has had to govern by defending and goalkeeping. And he used his veto pen, both the line item veto and the full veto power for legislation, well. He provided a stability and a democratic voice in a way that I think helped make many people feel safer that there was the governor who would be taking on Robin Voss. And I hope that he uh, can get some true rest after he leaves office.
If you were to give him a letter grade, what would it be?
Well, right now it would be incomplete. His term isn't over yet. He could still do stuff.
Okay, but on what he's done so far.
I think I would give. I think it would be a solid A minus B plus A B.
Okay, that's interesting. Is there any particular ways that you have found yourself disagreeing with the governor?
Oh, I've publicly disagreed with the governor, whether it was the surplus legislation or signing in. There are multiple penalty enhancers. He committed to reducing the prison population by half. I think that's difficult to do when there's legislation that is, increasing sentencing and not focusing on what actual sentencing guidelines are. There's, we're think it's good to challenge the executive, and I hope to work collaboratively, and I will center collaboration with the legislature at almost, in my time, if I am governor. And I hope that he will continue to do that even in these last couple of months here.
You've been a part of a lot of different forums over the past few months. We held one in January with Main Street Action. There's been dozens of them over the past few months. As you've gotten and I think it's given each of the candidates a lot of opportunity to hear where the other candidates are coming from, right? Where your opponents are coming from in this race. Is there anything that you've heard from other candidates in that in any of those forums or elsewhere where you thought, you know what, that's a pretty good one. I'd like to adopt that policy, make that part of my platform, or something that you felt was something that they discussed that you would want to incorporate? Are there any examples of that?
Senator Royce, when it comes to making sure our local governments have legal resources and ensuring that they are getting the best deal possible when it comes to data centers in their communities. I think a lot of local governments struggle to, they're having to make, they're negotiating with big tech, and they're much they're much better resourced legal teams. I like the idea of making data centers pay up front. I think Senator Royce is, she and I both like to nerd out on policy. And so I think there are good ideas that she's put forth when it comes to the data centers, as well as I'm interested in her healthcare plan. I do have some concerns around how the costs will remain, premium costs will be lower, but it's interesting to have. So there's certainly forums, certainly gotten good ideas from other candidates in the forums, and I think based on what I heard yesterday too, there are candidates who are adopting some of our good policies as well.
Have you had any conversations with any of those candidates about encouraging them to leave the race and support your campaign?
No.
No, not at all. Not one conversation.
I do not like to give campaign advice to other candidates. When people ask me, I've worked with many legislative candidates, folks who are running for both the Assembly or the Senate. But I know as a candidate and as somebody who's been on other many campaigns, the unsolicited advice can be taxing. So.
Okay, so what's next? What's next for you? What's next for the campaign over these next, what are we, 22 days here until the August 11th primary?
We just got a massive shipment of literature. We're excited to have literature, and actually in both Hmong and Spanish as well. But we are hitting the ground. 500,000 door knock goal, phone banks. I will be going to forums, debates, interviews, and making sure that we're still holding town halls so that people have access to me directly as a candidate, and working to finish strong, win in August, and again in November to defeat Tom Tiffany.
Okay, last question then. In a big field like this, most candidates are not going to win. I think you're in position, you're a contender to win, as I've said many times here, but not every candidate is going to win. If you do come up short, do you pledge to support whoever the Democratic nominee is?
I will work harder than any other candidate in this race to support the Democratic nominee, not only bringing in our organizing infrastructure and massive volunteer base, but to make sure that the outreach and the united coalition and united message to elect a Democrat to the governor's office. I will only be amplifying that, and I'm sure that I will work harder than anyone else to make sure I support the nominee.
Any final thoughts then for our listeners, viewers, readers, before we let you go off to the rest of your busy day here?
Make your plan to vote on or before August 11th and go to francescahong.com to learn more about our policies, to sign up to volunteer or make a contribution.
Francesca Hong, thanks so much.
Thanks, Dan.